so much. I love you so much. I love you so much. I love you so much.
Hello, all you positive heads out there. Thanks for tuning your beautiful brainwaves into another episode of the Positive Head Podcast, where we are firmly convinced that creating success and happiness is rooted in understanding the ultimate nature of reality and the fact that as human beings, we are all immensely powerful fractals of the one and only source consciousness, which creates and animates all things. Now, of course, understanding this powerful truth is one thing. Applying this incredibly empowering wisdom to everyday life, well, that's another, which is exactly why we provide you with a fresh serving of soul food for thought 5 days a week to help constantly remind you of what matters most. You are it. And I'm your host, Brandon Beecham. I'm the reflection and extension of you who will be here each Wednesday interviewing a different consciousness changemaker. And on the other 4 weekdays, leading the way to ensure that your perspective is consistently expanded, your vibration is constantly elevated, and your heart is overflowing and full. And you guys have heard me say that if I ever run ads on this show, it will only be with a company that I fully support because I believe their intention is to make a positive difference in the world. Well, I'm pleased to announce that day has arrived and that this episode of the Positive Head Podcast is being brought to you thanks to the support of Gaia. If you're not familiar, Gaia is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content online. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. All right, all you positive heads, on this week's Powwow episode, I'm very excited to have my lovely friend Tricia Eastman here with me on the show. Tricia is a medicine woman who has worked with and curated medicine retreats all over the world for many years now, and she specializes working as a ceremonial facilitator for 5-MeO-DMT, a powerful psychedelic medicine from the Sonoran Desert toad that I recently had the privilege of experiencing thanks to her. And let me just say, wow. And wow, Tricia, welcome to the show. Hello.
Hello, I am just so grateful to be here. I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing and just want to say hello to the Positive Head audience. Thank you for being here, and I'm just excited to be on this journey with you. And I'll also mention that some of the substances that we're talking about today are scheduled in the United States and are legal. And so I do want to say that the work that I do is outside of the country. I do retreats in countries where the work is legal.
Like where we met, Costa Rica.
In Costa Rica. And Mexico, Portugal, Spain. There's other countries where, for instance, 5-MeO-DMT is not scheduled. And so it's a beautiful way to create an environment that's really conducive to healing, but also to be able to partake in these substances without feeling like that fear of like, oh my gosh, I'm breaking the law or something.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. And definitely important to note with this sort of conversation, because it's been a minute since I've went down this rabbit hole, actually, and I've had some of your peers on the Crossroads people, Martin Polenko, Martine, and Maria and Chavez, and we've went down this a few times, but this is definitely a different journey at this time, this space, because now I have actually experienced this toad medicine thanks to you, and whoa. And we're going to dive into that, guys, in a minute. But before we do, I want to be a little predictable and ask my same question I always open with. And that is, you're in an elevator.
Yeah.
You've got 10 floors to answer. The woman next to you looks over and says, "What's your passion?" What do you say?
My biggest passion is really about just this curiosity, going deep into the reaches of consciousness and asking questions and really looking behind what's on the surface. So this idea of, what is immortality? What are these things that we cannot explain in the universe, like the Bermuda Triangle, or why did the Egyptians have access to these, what we've heard, powerful modalities for consciousness expansion, and how do we connect to those things? So I feel like, connecting to ancestral technology, but also modern day technology. I've had stem cells that are illegal in the United States, in Mexico, like whatever modalities that are going to upgrade consciousness, of course, doing the research, doing it in a grounded way. And, my dream is just to hang out with amazing people where we can discover these tools together and learn about each other and connect to our hearts at the same time.
Beautiful. Well, that's quite the passion. And I think you're one of the first people to go over 10 floors. And so you're more than welcome to them, because there's plenty of abundance of floors left over from previous episodes. So let's back up a little bit before we dig into this work and the experience that I've recently had. And why don't you start by telling a little bit about your story? How did you end up on this unique path to facilitate what many claim, from my experience now at this point, I have to say, I've experienced with a lot of different medicines, and definitely the most potent and powerful experience of my life. So here you are, this ceremonial facilitator of this, one of the most powerful healing tools on the planet, if not the most powerful healing tools on the planet. How does one land there instead of, flipping burgers at McDonald's?
Oh my God. Well, when I was supposed to be flipping burgers at McDonald's, I was actually working at a counterculture bookstore in a town called Seattle, Washington, called Raver Books. And we had everything from Ram Dass to Terence McKenna to Alexander Shulgin. And I learned about psychedelics, and I played with psychedelics, and we threw raves in like illegal rave parties. And for some reason, I always ended up being the person kind of, back in this time, there wasn't Zendo Project, which Zendo Project is the beautiful services that are, it's like psychedelic first aid, and they have them at festivals for people that are having difficult psychedelic experiences. And so I just ended up being that person, holding space for a lot of people. Maybe they took too many mushrooms. Maybe they took too much LSD. Maybe they were just having some emotional bumps that were coming up along the ride, just having a powerful transcendental awakening experience with psychedelics. And then interestingly, fast forward, have this corporate life, have a really amazing job where I'm traveling, burning my candles at both ends, but not happy. And I have all this anxiety. I go and see a psychologist. One psychologist says, leading expert, University of Washington, oh, you're just like a breed of Chihuahua. It's like in your genetic nature, you're just like a shaky, anxious person. And then this other one, he's a
funny thing
behavioral psychologist, and he sits in the back of the room, and here I am, one of my biggest fears in this corporate job was I was doing a lot of public speaking, and I was terrified of it. So he would sit in the back of the room and he would be like, "You suck," and I'd be like, "This sucks." I'm like, seriously, there's got to be a better way. And I was literally willing to do anything to be free of my anxiety and my suffering.
Wow. And
to add to that, I had severe eating disorders since I was 10 years old that I had never really fully been able to get down to the bottom of. So I started working with MDMA again, which was something I was playing with back in my Raver book days. And this was in my 30s, and had a really powerful, what they call Kundalini awakening, which I know you know what that means.
Yeah.
And in this Kundalini awakening experience, I had the realization that I hadn't really connected to my authentic path and my authentic self. At the time I was married, I literally said to my husband, and it's really funny because I also, I want to give Tim Ferriss some props because I had also read the book 4 Hour Work Week.
Okay.
And I was like, I want to sell everything. I want to travel the world. I want to figure out what I can do to be of service to the planet rather than being one of those people contributing to the destruction of the planet. This is like 6 years ago. My husband said, I can't see that happening for at least 5 years. So literally, like 6 months down the road, I realized I had to leave him.
Yeah. Well,
Even though he's an amazing husband, we owned all these properties together. I literally gave him everything.
Wow.
Walked away with $47,000, which seems like a lot of money, but when you move to Europe, it goes really fast.
Sure.
In the process of my spiritual studies, I came across this book talking about ayahuasca. And I was like thinking I was going to have to like move to the jungle or something and go on these like crazy plant dietas. I knew that I wanted to work with ayahuasca. But I kept getting this like message, like just from my meditations and guides coming through to move to Los Angeles. And so when I moved to Los Angeles, literally got off the plane, went to this place that had just opened called Cafe Gratitude, of all places. It's like amazing, beautiful place where all the dishes are an affirmation, really positive.
Yeah, just for you guys who aren't familiar with Cafe Gratitude, they actually just opened one right near my house. We're recording in my studio, which is in my house. And it's really great because it's a vegan restaurant, and but everything is like like a dish will be called abundant, and then if you order it, you have to say, you don't have to, but you're supposed to say, I am. So when you're ordering, the waiter's like, you say to them, oh, I am abundant. And then the waiter will like affirm back to you, yes, you are abundant, and it's just such a cool process to tie in that whole thing to food. Just to share with you guys who maybe aren't in the Los Angeles area and don't know Cafe Gratitude, that's what it's about. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, it attracts really beautiful people, and that's actually how I made friends when I first moved to LA. I can attribute all of my relationships, which have like blossomed into some an amazing tribe that I've for the first time felt like it was like a coming home for me, like really feeling like I had a family, like a real like family, and I call it my star family. Like I feel like we've had many lifetimes together. But what happened was when I was in this Cafe Gratitude, like I met this beautiful human being, and I told him about my awakening process, and I was telling him about how I wanted to like work with ayahuasca. And he's like, oh, I'll introduce you to my shaman. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, I know a guy that does it here. And I'm like, you mean I don't have to go to the jungle to have this experience? So I had this incredibly powerful awakening experience. Never imagined that I would be working with medicine. This shaman had trained for like 10 years. Like, I had a lot of respect for what he did. And for that type of medicine, you definitely need that training. It's essential. It's sophisticated, the soul realms are very sophisticated.
Yeah, if you guys, by the way, want to go back to one of my earliest powwows interview episodes is with Pablo Miller, and he's a dear friend who's been doing ayahuasca, leading the ayahuasca ceremony for like 25 years. So we delve into his, that particular medicine in detail if you go back, and by the way, let me just throw this out because I've never thrown it out before. Sometimes people ask how to find episodes. And what you can do is if you go to positivehead.com, you can actually type in keywords. And a lot of times I know you guys are listening through iTunes or SoundCloud or, now you can even tune in just recently through Spotify. But I just realized I've never told people this when they're asking how to find stuff. There's a search functionality on positivehead.com. So you go and search for Pablo Miller, for example, that episode will come up, or ayahuasca, that'll probably come up as a keyword too. So anyway, sorry, go right ahead.
No, it's perfect. So, then, going back to someone who I have so much gratitude for in my process, Martin Polanco. Met him a little over 4 years ago. And he tells me, oh, I've got this clinic in Mexico. We do treatments for people with heroin addiction, and we use a psychedelic medicine called ibogaine. Yeah. And, someone literally can come in with a needle in their arm, have this treatment, and within 48 hours come back out and not have any withdrawals and not have any cravings.
He was on as well, guys, if you want to search for Crossroads or Martine. it's an incredible like breakdown that he gives of what this does, especially for people who are, struggling with heroin withdrawals and so forth. It's like, as he put it, I believe, and you'll probably agree, Tricia, in that episode, he's like, it's the closest thing to like a miracle drug, or miracle substance. I don't even like the word drug. Medicine, miracle medicine that exists, know. And I know you work closely with it still even now, and we'll get into that. But
yeah, I mean, miracle is even an understatement. It truly is, like, I call it the avatar medicine because it truly connects you to the aspects of yourself that are your highest potentials that I've never experienced in all of my psychonaut journeys and all of my plant medicine journeys, pretty much working with every medicine out there. I mean, the only medicine I think that I haven't sat with is Datura, which is Toei, what they call in the ayahuasca traditions, which they say is pretty much like on that level with Iboga, like really powerful.
I'm not familiar with that one. It's obviously lesser known.
Datura is the flower that kind of grows around here. It's like a white kind of trumpet like flower, but it's kind of similar to it's in the same family as like the nightshades, like the different nightshades, and it like takes
Hell's bells or whatever they call it. Is that one? Oh, the one that looks like a bell. Sort of, that's poisonous. I know it's not the same thing. I wonder if it's like related to that in some way.
Some of them have, and I'm sorry, I apologize because it's just on the tip of my tongue, the name of the flower, but there's one that contains LST, which is connected to LSD. And so it's a psychedelic family of flowers, but Datura is by far the most powerful. They say that if you go in without a guide, you probably won't come back mentally. Wow. Mentally in the right place. So I'm not like jumping at going and doing that, although I've heard some people working with the right shaman have had some like life-changing experiences with it. But back to the abogaine. So abogaine is actually from a root called Iboga, and Iboga is a ceremonial medicine used in an area of Africa called Gabon, used by a tribe called Bwiti. And from what I understand working with this medicine, it's the oldest plant medicine that's existed from the very first humans that ever inhabited this earth. Of course, this is what the medicine said, so I can't necessarily go back and say, okay, I've got this proof. But from what I understand about it, it seems accurate.
Now, when you say this is what the medicine says, explain that to people who haven't had these experiences. What do you mean? Medicine that talks? Like, no. Obviously, you're talking about. Well, I'll let you explain.
So there's two aspects that I like to express. I mean, actually, there's more than two. There's when you are in a plant medicine experience, there's the aspect of you connecting with your soul and being able to have a direct transmission and connection with your soul. That can go beyond just like your soul being like, hey, how's it going? It actually is just more of like almost like a psychic connection where it's like a direct transmission of information. Then there's also the way that the medicine can tell you is also through story. And so it can give you symbols and tell you stories. That's very common in like ayahuasca to have visuals that are telling you something. And then sometimes, you might have guides, like entities that show up in the medicine that are there to tell you something. So there's many ways the medicine can talk to you. It can directly talk to you, but then it can talk to you through these other modalities. And then I've even seen it where I am starting to come out of the medicine space and I'll have nature interacting with me in a way that it's talking to me, and it's like the medicine has opened up that channel to be able to have that direct interaction with, I've had bats doing healing on me. I've had, conversations with spiders, and you might think that's crazy, but they were really profound
conversations and
healing.
Communications.
Yeah. And so back to like this experience. So I talked to Martine and I said, I've had these eating disorders since I was 10. I've done ayahuasca. I've done all this spiritual work. I've been attuned for Reiki, Tantra. I've done every kind of modality you can imagine. And I just can't get down to the core of this piece. And I'm like, I really feel like this abogaine could maybe help me. If it helps people with heroin addiction, I think it could help people with food addiction. Right. And he said, I'm willing to give it a try. And coolest guy in the world. He hooked me up, went down there, had the treatment. It was the most powerful experience up until that moment of my life.
Yeah.
And for the first time, I met my soul.
Wow.
I had a direct connection with my soul. And I felt the deep beauty and, of the divine aspect of myself that I had never connected to before, to where I had the most immense gratitude for life. I realized, which this is like a big teaching in Bwiti, life is a gift. My body is a gift. And that there's no reason in the world that I shouldn't fully love and accept myself, or fully love and accept all things on this planet.
Yeah.
And I just cried, I think, for like 2 hours. It was like just deep stuff. And then I was so grateful. I asked the medicine, how can I be of service? And the medicine said, write a story. So I wrote a story for this blog called Rebel Society, and it reached a lot of women. It created a lot of buzz and opened up a lot of dialogue with other women that had been suffering from the same stuff that I had suffered with. And it was really deep and really heartfelt, like really sharing details about like some of the horrible stuff that I did to myself.
You got really vulnerable, I'm sure.
I got really vulnerable. And shortly after that, Martine had said that he needed a little help in the clinic. He needed someone who could kind of fill in when other people that were facilitating their weekend psychospiritual program, which was a program working with Iboga and then another substance called 5-MeO-DMT, specifically from the venom of a toad called Bufo alvarius. So I literally got trained to work with these two medicines. And the first thing I thought in my mind was, oh my God, I'm not a shaman. Like, I'm being asked. And literally, I like went into this meditation. I reconnected to this Iboga spirit or Abogain. And I was like, is this what I'm supposed to do? And it was like, you're the one that asked, how can I be of service? I'm bringing you this opportunity. Don't like get your ego all caught up in it, and just move forward. And I did. And it just took me on this wild ride and here I am with you.
Right. Wow. Yeah. So obviously you were sort of gradually integrated into this path. And then of course, it seems like you were the guinea pig in a sense for now. Are other women now using Ibogaine for the purpose of helping with the eating disorders? Is this something that now has become a thing?
Absolutely. Not only that, but there have been some really, like at the Psychedelic Sciences Conference that happened last year in Oakland, which was put on by the MAPS organization, which is the Multidisciplinary Association.
I had Rick Doblin on a while back as well.
Awesome. I love him.
He's amazing.
He's
he runs MAPS. And you guys, another one to search if you want to. These are like all the episodes over the 3 years or so that I've just went down this rabbit hole. So Rick is another great one to check out.
Yeah, I have so much respect for what he's done, and he
incredible.
Has the biggest heart. But he put on he helped facilitate one of the biggest psychedelic conferences, and some of the leading people in psychedelic research talked about just new findings. And there was a woman, and I apologize that I don't have her name off the top of my head, but she did a whole talk on ayahuasca for eating disorders. And it totally makes sense because ayahuasca is really powerful for healing the gut and just physical healing for the body.
Sort of figures out what you need most, right? So it's like these medicines, the way it seems, you talked about speaking to the medicine or there's a spirit that animates these, there's a lot of people have the experience of communing with grandmother ayahuasca. Yeah. And, speaking of Pablo, I remember the way he described Iboga is almost like the grandfather version.
Yes.
And do you resonate with that idea? One is more of the feminine energy and Iboga being a little bit more of a masculine energy. And it's really a fascinating concept when you start thinking of them being living spirits in their own right.
Absolutely. And people do have experiences, and not everyone does, but where they meet the spirit of Iboga or they meet the spirit of ayahuasca, and they recognize this entity that might be a little more feminine or might be a little more masculine. I would say this. There's two reasons why I think that they have, like for instance, like for the masculine, You look at like dopamine system. The dopamine system in the brain is very deeply connected with safety. And the first core thing that happens when you're a baby, like those safety anchors are created by the masculine energy, which is through the father. And so in order for you to be able to live in a world where you're like, oh, I'm living in a safe, loving universe, that anchor has to be put in place. Now, the medicines that work on that, which is really core, the core disease of that is addiction, which pretty much our entire society has some level of addictive tendencies, and that all comes from dopamine, whether it's checking your iPhone or checking your Facebook,
right,
or, you know, work addiction or food addiction or whatever. So the iboga actually works on the dopamine receptors. It works on pretty much every receptor. It's a really miraculous medicine in that way. Peyote also works on the dopamine receptors. San Pedro works on the dopamine receptors. So those are all like grandfather medicines. They fall in that category.
I see.
The feminine medicines are the tryptamine family. So tryptamine would be DMT, although I'll say 5-MeO-DMT is kind of, it's a non-dual state. So I don't really think of it as having a sex, like feminine or masculine, although the way that it brings you into it is a very feminine energy. But like mushrooms, that's a feminine energy. Cannabis, although it doesn't work on the serotonin receptor sites in the way that the tryptamines do, tryptamine family would be DMT, which is in ayahuasca, as well as 5-MeO-DMT. So that whole entire family is working on the serotonin, and serotonin is deeply connected to the mother. Even look at breast milk and all those things. It helps with serotonin, and serotonin is also essential for your gut health. So it's deeply connected to the gut health, and that's why ayahuasca specifically is very healing for the gut.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, as I mentioned, guys, I have recently, thanks to Tricia, had the experience of this toad medicine, the 5-MeO-DMT. And, you know, I've experimented a lot. I've definitely had my, hand in the cookie jar for, you know, from LSD to psilocybin mushrooms to, you know, ketamine to even an NDMT, which is different than the 5-MeO, right? The 5-MeO coming from this toad. And wow, it's one of those things, you know, I've been interested in for a very long time, but it takes some major courage, because essentially what happened, and it's hard to put into words, and you guys know I normally don't have a shortage of things to say, but it's like facing it down, and Tricia you have such a calming presence and energy. You definitely made it as comfortable as I could, you know, going in. And really, guys, what it is kind of like my experience. There's really no words for the dissolving of the self that it's like you become everything and nothing simultaneously, and it's just like this love that washes over that is so powerful. And you know, it's almost like if you imagine everything being pulled out from under you. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm floating in like it's like free falling almost. And I could see how people could have slip into fearful state, because it's almost like I feel like now I have a glimpse of what the death process is like. And I really, you know, as you said afterwards, it's like, did you lose yourself? And we actually had two different applications. The first time, I don't feel like I fully lost myself, and the second time I did fully lose myself. And wow, it just like, you know, what happened with me in my own personal experience was, you know, a lot of like energy moving through the body and releasing of trauma is the way you put it, and tonings and like, you know, sounds coming through that I feel like I'm tapping at different moments. I'm tapping into like other lives, other parallel me's. At times it even sounds like very native kind of energy feels like was moving through me. And it was, like I said, there's really nothing that can fully prepare you to experience that in a sense ego death, but at the same time moving into full surrender and trust with it for me was It's like, okay, I trust you, Tricia, as a facilitator. I trust my higher self. I trust source. I trust love. And I'm willing to jump off the cliff. And, as Terrence McKenna talks about, this, I've read it many times, the jumping into the abyss and finding it's a feather bed. And that's really like what it ultimately was. And you come out and you're just like, oh my gosh, like, even having done 5 ayahuasca journeys, they didn't compare to the intensity of this, toad medicine. And it's sort of like with ayahuasca, for those of you who don't know, it's sort of like a slow release of DMT over many hours, almost like an LSD or mushroom trip. Whereas, the 5-MeO DMT, it's like you get blasted to the moon and back in 10 minutes. Yeah. And so that experience, for me also with my ayahuasca journeys, it was a lot of for me, a lot of fears came up, like that I needed to process. The fear of something happening to my family or myself, or, and I don't feel like a super fearful person in my waking life. But when I would go into these states, and it's happened previous to ayahuasca with mushrooms and LSD, where fears come up that are like deep seated. So what happens is a lot of times you're taking out the trash, you're cleaning out these blockages. And so for this, it was like the ultimate face fears to dive into 5-MeO and go really, really deep and find that it's a feather bed. And overall, it was like, all in all, it's hard for me to put into words what I experienced, but love was there. And I came out the other side feeling like, wow, I just had the guts to do that, to dive in the deep into the pool and not really know where it's going to go. Mm-hmm. And the trust that I brought into it and the surrender that I brought into it proved to be, just divine and beautiful. And now I feel like it's like fear has left my body even more fully, and trust is more integrated into my being, and surrender and all these things. It's like an upgrade, a level up. And really, I've just recently had this experience, and I wasn't really ready until now. And, maybe we all have different paths. Some of you may never want to do this. Others of you are probably hearing this and be like, oh my gosh, I'm ready. I want to do it now, But, I just wanted to take a moment and just kind of share a little bit about what I've just very, very recently went through with this. And I can't thank you enough for giving me the gift of this experience. It's been absolutely incredible.
I have to say, like, the biggest gift for me is, not only getting to experience you, but every time I do this work, I get to watch. It's like a rebirthing process. Like the word.
It's a great way to put it. It's
bufo,
like death and birth.
Yeah, it's like
rebirth.
Bufo alvarius means alva means of the womb, and these little toads they hibernate underground 10 months out of the year. They only come out during the rainy season, so it's almost like they're in this gestation period, just like it takes 9 months for a baby to be born.
Wow.
They come out just these 2 months when they mate and they eat, and they only come out at night, and then they go back in and they go back into a meditative state. They've actually measured the brain frequency of these toads, and they are in a meditative state, not like a bear that's hibernating, but in a meditative state. And interestingly, the same state of being is our flow state, which is gamma. Gamma frequency is the frequency of flow. So if you take a monk or a meditator who has spent 20, 30, 40 years meditating, they're going to have a high level of gamma frequency. There's different, frequencies like theta, one example. And within these frequencies, when you have a high level of gamma and you're able to hold that for a sustained period of time, your immune system functions more efficiently. You're able to recall data and remember data at a very high rate. Just your overall functioning, it's pretty much all intuition based. And most importantly, you have a connection to all things. Mm-hmm. So it's this feeling of oneness and connection to all things. And at the same time, interestingly, like one study I was reading, the monks call it a feeling of being blessed. And so I feel like there's a deep connection with the state of gratitude and the state of just emptiness. And just when we're in that place and we can totally trust. everything evolves in its own divine perfection in your life. And when you do this medicine, it allows for you to connect to that. It builds a bridge. It changes the neural pathways in your brain to where you can access that, just like that monk that's meditated 20, 30, 40 years. So it's also the ultimate biohack because it's allowing you to connect to that flow state so much easier.
Wow. Yeah, I gotta say, I feel there's a shift that's taken place in me. It's like something is me, but like it's like I can tap into once that medicine has been introduced in such a potent way, and actually it's in us organically, right? We have DMT naturally. It's available, and it's in a lot of things, right? Not just these toads. It's in plants and humans, and I've heard it said that they think when we die, a large dose of DMT is released, and when you're sleeping, and so it's a really interesting that this is something that's very organic to the body already, and so it passes the blood-brain barrier. It's meant to be a part of your experience one way or another, whether you take it from this magical monk ascended master toad that's meditating underground for 10 months out of the year, or you just get it through its naturally occurring in your body. I mean, this is like sort of the supercharged path of experience, and maybe not for everyone, but definitely for me. And I'm so glad I did it, because now I feel like it's like shown me something that I can always access. It's like I feel like more connected to source, my higher self, whatever you want to call it. It's like I can think about it, and it's like still working in me, and it's such a incredible tool in the tool belt that I didn't have before. It's
so the 5-MeO-DMT is endogenous to the body. It's made in the lungs, it's made in the spine, it's made pretty much everywhere in the body, but the highest concentration is in the lungs and in the spine. And what happens, good example, so Montauk Chia, he has these darkroom retreats that he does in Thailand. And for 21 days, you are in complete darkness. You're meditating. You're not around any other contact except for the person that brings your juices in to your room like a couple times a day. And after those 21 days, you have what's called a tryptamine cascade effect, where you actually start to produce 5-MeO-DMT naturally within your own brain, and you have basically a full release toad experience naturally within your body.
Wow.
So we can create it ourselves. We just have to be like the toads and hibernate underground.
What a trip.
Or meditate, I should say, underground. But we literally make this in our own body. And so it's one of the other plants that has a high concentration of 5-MeO is Phalaris grass, which is very common in Greece. And so some people hypothesize that the Eleusinian Mysteries was, they used Phalaris grass, which was like a hidden mystery school, and you weren't allowed to talk about what happened. And that totally makes sense too, because when you have this experience, it's all about whatever your experience was is unique to you, and it tells you about you and your life purpose. But that information isn't useful to the next guy, because it actually can trip him up, because if he's expecting to see God, this guy with a beard, and not that you see entities, you don't even see entities on this. What I mean by that is you don't necessarily see angels or things like within NDMT, you might see machine elves and stuff. But with 5-MeO, you don't see that. It's more like light.
It's more like you become all that is and nothing simultaneously.
Yeah.
That was the best way I can put it into words, that for something that there really isn't words.
But if you have an expectation going in, it just gets in the way.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think it is really important that, you have to be careful with the psychedelics. You don't want to walk into it like having this expectation of this experience. And at the same time, your intentions do have a really strong impact on how that experience is going to show up for you.
Yeah.
But also the other stuff, your subconscious, what's going on inside, it's a reflection of whatever that is. So because we source so much trauma in our bodies, because we're not like, the animals like in Africa where they get chased, but like a bird gets chased by a cheetah, gets away, immediately it starts to shake the trauma off the body. And it's very common when going into the experience, and if I remember correctly, you did some shaking too.
For sure, yeah.
Where you literally start, I call it neurotropic tremors, where you literally start shaking trauma off the body, because there's so much that's stored in our body, and we literally are weighed down by our trauma.
Yeah.
So these tools, and I mean like everything from ayahuasca to peyote, they all have this ability of cleaning out these stored traumas out of our body.
Yeah. I remember Pablo, the way he put it is like you could go to, 20 years of psychiatric treatment, and you may go, and he used his hands like you may be this closed, he had his two hands clasped together, and then he would like flower them open. And over 20 years, this flowering may happen, or you can take this path potentially and do that in, a night.
Exactly.
And that's it's not for everyone, and it is definitely diving in the deep into the pool. But what you find is a feather bed. It really is. It's like you're infinitely loved and supported. And one of the things, as I started coming back into my body, and it's almost like being born again, like, what is this body that I'm in? And like, what, my hands, and it's all like almost foreign again at first when you come back. And I remember one of the things that was sort of playing in my head is like, you always get to decide. I get to decide how powerful the experience is, how deep it goes.
Yeah.
What happens plays out in my 3D life. You're always deciding. Like, there's no one there waiting to harm you. There's these fears and things that we all hold on to. They're self-created. There's really nothing there to fear. It's like you always get to choose. There's not this thing that's going to be imposed on you that you have to suffer through. It's always a choice. You are source. You are an emanation of source, and source gets to choose. Anyone that's chosen, let's say, darkness or pain or suffering or evil, they chose it. And there's value there. There's a gift there, and they're very, very brave souls. And I think we've all probably made that choice at some point in our eternal journey. But make no mistake, at least that was what was shown to me as part of my journey, was make no mistake, it was always a choice. It was never imposed on any being or soul. And so when you can really understand it, if you do ever decide to go into this work, it's like, it's going to be what you need it to be. And if you can move into and take that as an example in the rest of your life, just trusting and surrendering, and that it's going to be exactly what it needs to be and not anything more, and you are infinitely loved and supported, and there's nothing that's going to be imposed on you, that it's going to be actually what you've chosen at some level that's perfect for you.
Yeah, and I'll even get into just the fear aspect a little bit deeper, in that I truly believe what happened was, in the colonization of humans, we shut off a lot of our faculties. We got away from our instincts and our intuition. And when we turn those off, we cut off a lot of really important information that we need for our safety and our survival. Then what happened was we got hurt. And because we weren't getting that information is why the trauma occurred, because we weren't listening, we weren't present. And the more that we built up this ancestral karma in our bodies over lifetimes of colonization and being conditioned through our ancestral line as young children, we forgot how to trust the universe. And so now we're coming back to that, where we're reopening that, and we're like, kind of like a kid riding a bike, and so sometimes you fall down, sometimes you get hurt, you get back up again, and you're like, okay, I can do this. But it's that trust to know that you can maintain that balance. And then you just get to a point where you just keep yourself balanced, and you don't have to worry anymore about the fear.
Right. All right. Well, now seems like a good moment to take a quick minute to tell those of you who aren't familiar a bit about our sponsor, Gaia. I've been a big fan of Gaia for many years now, which is why they're the only content provider I've ever reached out to in regards to potentially supporting this podcast. So needless to say, I'm very excited they're now supporting the show. Gaia truly is my personal go-to source for streaming consciousness content on the web. They have an incredible 7,000 plus exclusive videos covering 5,000 years of wisdom. Just to give you an example, on the show Missing Links, the incredible researcher Greg Braden explores all the biggest questions concerning who we are, where we come from, where we're going, by connecting the missing links between science and spirituality to complete our understanding of humanity's history and to better understand the interconnectedness of all things. Awesome, right? And that's just one example. As you guys constantly hear me say, it's a daily conscious effort to maintain an elevated vibration. And if you're looking to go deep down the rabbit hole to do so, then Gaia is the best place I know of to do it, period. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. And yeah, one of the things that came through also with that is, you always get to decide at some level, and it goes back to something that I talk about a lot on the show, but was integrated even more fully into my being through this Toad experience, and it was that our whole reality is stories. We're constantly telling stories, and you guys know, as listeners, I am like, I love stories. I love stories of all kinds. I tell stories. I have my own. I love other people's. And what's powerful that I realized even more fully through this experience is, if a story is coming up in you that you don't like, you get to you can rewrite it on the spot. Like, that sunk in more fully. It's like, I came out of the experiences. I'm coming back to my body. We always decide. And then a story starts popping up, and it's a story that I don't like, something, not really good, or that I don't want to really happen, right? And I'm like, oh, that's a story. And yes, that story can exist and play out, or I can tell a totally new one right now. And so I'm sitting there as I'm coming back into my body, and I'm rewriting stories, is what part of the experience that I was having. And, yes, this medicine opened that up for me even more fully, but you don't need the medicine to have that realization. All of you guys, it's like, start rewriting the stories. You're going to see them pop up all the time. And especially if you're paying attention, you're really becoming the observer. You're going to notice these stories popping up all throughout your day. I'm telling a story. This is how it is. This is how it works. This is what I'm dealing with. And you can literally start rewriting those. And by rewriting them and realizing the power that you have to do so, it instantly, abracadabra, as I speak, I create. Yes. As I believe, I create. And so that sunk in with me even more fully as I went to the state of being all that is and nothing simultaneously. It's like, there is no other to impose anything on me. I'm it. We are the one. Yeah. And it's such an empowering thing to have, settle in even more fully into the core of my being and knowingness of how reality works.
And what's interesting about that is there's a couple things. One is, when you're telling the story, see if you can focus on the part of your body that you feel that story coming from, and have a conversation with whatever that thing is that you're feeling. If it's tension, if it's sickness, and does it have a color? Does it have a shape? Get to know it really well. And then usually by the time that you have a deep understanding of it, it starts to kind of melt and let go, because you've gotten the lesson from it. Yeah. It's done. It doesn't have to be there anymore. Yep. So you don't even have to always rewrite it. Sometimes you can just let go of the story and receive the story that is of your highest good. Yeah. And
it's alchemy, right? That's transmuting.
It's totally alchemy and transmuting. And the other part that's really interesting is, and I talk about this in my class, The Psychedelics of Money, which is a class I teach about, really the idea of the Kundalini and how it affects wealth and abundance, like really connecting to your own power. And what's interesting about it is that a lot of the stories that we live in our solar system. So astrology is all the planets that are in our solar system all the way to the sun. The sun and that whole story exists within your universe that's contained inside yourself. Yeah. All the way to the solar plexus. But once you get into the heart, you're no longer dictated by astrology anymore.
Wow.
All the planetary systems above that are beyond that karmic, tit for tat and all those archetypal stories. I mean, every movie that's ever been written, everything, the I Ching, tarot, all of it is based off of these stories.
Yeah.
But there is an ascended version of that story that is from the heart and all love.
It's almost like, you're friends with David Wilcock, right? And I think it's him that I've heard talk about before, how the story of this planet or our solar system or galaxy, I can't remember how he put it in the container, but is the story of the hero's journey.
Yes.
Have you heard him speak on this before or talk about this?
Absolutely.
And it's like what you're talking about is even now next. And I heard someone else talking about this recently too, how they were referencing, the story of mankind. Every movie, every popular movie, Star Wars, the ultimate hero's journey tale. It's like, this is the story, and we love that story so much because it's our story.
Yeah.
And so, but we're now moving into a next level upgrade where we're even transcending that story in some way. And I heard someone saying this, and I don't quite recall what their explanation was. I wish I had caught the whole conversation. I think I was hearing two conversations at once or something, but it's an interesting idea. It's like there's definitely some level of upgrading that seems to be going on individually and collectively.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how you feel about that. Someone who's working so closely with the spirit realm, in a sense, and you even talk about this, during your the ceremonies that you're conducting and administering and facilitating, that you have gotten so sensitive where you even see the spirit leaving body, and you see energies when people are shaking out some of this trauma from lifetimes and whatever. It's like you see the energy. So as someone who's been on the razor's edge like you have, do you feel like that is something like you see just like a mass upgrade that seems to be taking place across mankind, both collectively and individually?
Yeah, the thing I love about the work that you're doing is that you're using a lot, like in your logo, you have the flower of life. The flower of life is a geometry that is, like our entire universe is constructed of geometries, and these geometries hold different layers of power, and many people call that like the tree of life. And it's like these different levels of geometries, and the way that we ascend into a geometry that has the ability of holding more consciousness, which gives us all more access, is by making a different decision than the decision that was made historically. So going from beyond the ego, as I was saying, like this old archetypal way of doing things, into the ascended story of the heart. And every time that happens, it creates a link into the grid, and I call it a Christ conscious grid because people can understand that concept. Although I don't know if that's the generally accepted term. I've heard it before, so I would say maybe that could be true. But every time a person makes a choice from the heart, it goes into the Christ conscious grid and makes it accessible for all other beings that are confronted with that scenario. So what you're doing is you're building neural pathways in our collective consciousness to allow everyone to make higher choices. So the more that we make choices from the heart, we're actually sending healing to the entire planet and the entire cosmos. Wow.
What a powerful, powerful concept that is. Whew. So what is your take on, certainly there's been a renaissance, if you will, of, plant medicines and psychedelics being looked at in a much more serious manner in recent years. We talked about our friend, Rick Doblin from MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies, and he's been at it in the trenches for 30 years, working on bringing this stuff to the mainstream, and he probably had some dark years in the 80s and 90s. I'm sure we're like, this stuff is for cracked out hippies or whatever. You're crazy if it's nonsense. It's harmful. It's not good. Here, have this alcohol meantime, which just destroys everything. And have another drink and don't go there. But now there's such a, I know when I had him on the show, even probably 2 years ago now, he was talking about getting MDMA. They're close to having MDMA approved for treatment of PTSD and veterans and things like that. Really having a lot of help from using that particular medicine, which is such a heart opener. And I've worked with it before, and I know you work with it as well. And now I know since that time, they've gotten the green light. Like, it's happening, right? So you have ayahuasca, same thing, where there's been approval for certain people in the States now, tied to religious organizations, I believe, that can now legally administer this powerful plant medicine. It seems like the tides are really, really turning with general acceptance, and people who once maybe would have looked at it as like, this is a joke, are now like saying, hold on, this is like, might be one of the most important things that we've ever overlooked, or that was really suppressed, because it does free you from the system that has sort of had a stranglehold on society and the planet. But I'm curious, where you see it going, how you feel about all the, the changes that are taking place, and sort of the opening. I mean, I can even use on a personal level, my mother, for example. I mean, here's someone who, I've seen her have like a sip of wine in my life. She's never smoked a cigarette. I'd be surprised to learn if she's had sex with anyone besides my father. Just like, as goody of a human as they come. And now, and if I talked about smoking marijuana, 10 years ago, she's like, oh my God, your brain's going to be destroyed. You're going to hell and your brain's destroyed. And, the world is collapsing. And now she's acknowledging that, hold on, maybe I've been lied to. Maybe these things are tools and medicines. And it's like, if someone like her can kind of start opening their mind to it, I just know there's a shift happening. And anyway, that's a very long-winded question of what you think about the shift that's happening and how these things are being viewed by the collective and by the authorities, sort of loosening their grip. Of course, marijuana, being legalized even here in the state where we're at, as of January 1st. And so where do you see it going? What do you think about the shift?
So, I mean, first of all, I think that us being able to have these tools and use them in the way that we want to use them is our right. And I think that's really important that we have that freedom. I also do see in some shamanistic, like lineages, even in ayahuasca, people abusing power. And so what I think really needs to happen is, number one, we need more psychedelic research. We need more, there are so many powerful people in the world, I can't even say their names, that are coming and using these substances and having powerful awakenings, having powerful transmissions of ideas that are world changing, which is beautiful. And at the same time, for the amount of people that are having those experiences, there aren't as many equally giving back to the medicines in terms of their sustainability. The toads, they're a threatened species.
Wow.
The peyote medicine is an endangered plant.
Really?
Iboga is an endangered plant, and I could go into a long, but I'll just say as an overview, these are plants that there is a limited supply, and there definitely needs to be measures taken to protect them on a global scale. And I would even say that with the demand just blowing through the roof and will very quickly even go higher, we need to look at our future for the next generations, for ayahuasca, for San Pedro, for all of these other medicines that are a little more abundant. Interestingly, I had a conversation with a woman, and she had said she felt like instead of drinking so much ayahuasca, it might actually be better for the environment to use mushrooms, because you can grow mushrooms everywhere and they grow on everything, and it's good for the environment. And I thought, wow, that's a really smart idea for sustainability, because you can actually do similar blends where you mix the MAOI with the MAOI from the ayahuasca blend. It's called MA.
Yeah.
It's like mushroom ayahuasca.
Yeah, that's what I've taken a few times.
I mean, I'd be interested to see, like, getting think tanks together of different medicine facilitators carrying different lineages, because there is this really big neo-shamanic emergence of these different traditions, because we have the ability to get combo from Peru and iboga from Africa and peyote from Mexico or from Arizona or Texas. And
where's the toad? What indigenous to? Bufo.
It's indigenous to the Sonoran Desert, which goes through Arizona and then through like Hermosillo, which is like a border town, right through the Mexico on the right by Arizona. And so we definitely need to look at how these medicines can be used in right relationship. I think a lot of these, some of these facilitators are coming in and putting together a lot of medicines and modalities that is almost too much, and can also, like, if you overdo it with medicines, I like to think of it this way. When your clothes get dirty, you use bleach to clean them. But if you use too much bleach, you can bleach a hole in them. And not like the medicines will bleach a hole in you, but it can just be too aggressive to where it, like, destabilizes you if you're doing it too
It's like
frequently.
anything. Too much water is bad for you, and we talked about this.
Yeah.
Like, and you were talking about your own experience and journey with it, less being more for you at this point. And I think that is such a great takeaway and lesson for life in general. Yeah. It's like this, the song that I wanted to play at the end of my journey. It's like, I only, eat to fill me up. I sleep to dream. It's like you take what you need, essentially, kind of thing. And I think we all find, with across the board in life, less is more. There's no reason to hoard or overdo it or sort of abuse anything. And then it goes from being helpful water to, okay, I just poisoned myself by having too much of it and bleached a hole in myself, So I think that's a really powerful point to make about all of this stuff. It's like, and I feel that way with some of the medicines that I've used. Ketamine's a great example. It's like, I had such powerful experiences from it. Whereas now, when I play with that particular medicine, it's like, I feel like Terrence McKenna said, when you get the message, hang up the phone. Yeah. It's like, I feel like I've gotten the message. I've gotten what can be gotten from there. And if I continue to do it, in a festival environment or something like that, it's like, I don't get nearly as much out of it. And then it's like, okay, well, then why am I doing this? Hold on. Is this a habitual thing? Yeah. Is it an escapism? Am I using it for escape, or am I using it for healing? Am I, and you really need to be honest with yourself and really look at these things and see, what's why. What's your why? And realizing a lot of times less is more. Take what you need and nothing more in life, and that is the path of balance, right?
Minimum effective dose. I really love the Buddhist philosophy, and I remember one time a Buddhist said to me, when you're eating too much, you're taking another man's meal. And I truly believe that there's enough for everybody on this planet. It's just all about how we're distributing the resources. And those that have too much, the too much is making them sick. And that's why they're coming to the psychedelics, is they're realizing, they're finally waking up and realizing, holding on to things like a masses of wealth, it's the same energy of scarcity. So they have that same energy. It's poverty consciousness. And the only way to be abundant is to just allow those resources to flow through you.
Right.
And I do see that, if we all continue, like, the first thing I'm seeing is that in the world of even spirituality or in the world of plant medicine, the Western approach is kind of reductionist, like, oh, let's take the best part of this and let's take the best part of this. But there truly is an alchemy that happens in the ceremonial container that is the healing. And so when you take it out of context, you're actually not getting the full healing benefits of it. And each of these plants has a relationship with you once you work with it, whether it's mushrooms or ayahuasca or iboga. And usually they stay with you after the experience. So if you're doing mushrooms and then the next night you're doing ayahuasca, you're not really even giving yourself time to get
integrate
all the goodness from whatever this plant has to teach you. And there's more there for you.
Right. Well, I'd like to change gears just a little bit here and get, you guys know I love my stories of synchronicity or serendipity or positive paranormal kind of stories. And I know you've had a lot of like fascinating journeys and experiences and magical things along your path. So I'd love if there is a story that comes to mind that's just a fun, magical, inspiring story that you'd care to share.
I have so many stories. It's like they're all kind of...
Let me put on my surprise face.
So I'll just, like, the medicine that, in my opinion, I've just seen the most magic and just really had the deepest connection with is the iboga. And every time I work with this medicine, I'll partake in a ceremony, and I love working with it in Costa Rica because it's a jungle medicine and it's really happy in the jungle. And, flying to Africa is kind of a little bit of a trek, and to do something that intense and then have to be on a plane after and before, it's a lot for the body. So I love going to Costa Rica, and the nature there is so beautiful. And so every time I do iboga in Costa Rica, the animals just talk to me and interact with me in a way that, and it's just such a gift. And I remember there's this one time my partner and I, we were had just finished a really intense journey where we were both like working through a lot of our own darkness. And literally these two bats, like my boyfriend came and laid in my bed. We were in separate beds because we were resting after the journey, but we wanted to give each other our own space. And he comes and he sits in my bed, and all of a sudden these two bats start sweeping down. And literally as we're talking, I can see the darkness leaving my body, and I can see the bats literally like sweeping it up and taking it away. And we're both looking at each other like, is this really happening right now? And then the next morning we were gone for the day. We come back, and one of the bats was on my bed, and it was a little baby. And I said, oh my God, I think the bat died. It took our energy, and it basically gave its life for us. And literally I kind of poked it with like a little fork to make sure it was alive, and then it fell behind the bed. And when I moved the bed open, I saw a scorpion. And so literally like all these like totems of like the darkness and the shadow. Wow. So there's a scorpion and a bat. Wow. And of course, I didn't want to kill it. I put it in a little cup and I threw it outside, and I sent a blessing for the scorpion and the bat. And just what was interesting about this is I'm a Scorpio, and I just always have these, like, I've never been stung by a scorpion, but I literally that weekend in ceremony, like the medicine facilitator said, like when I lifted my head, there was a scorpion sitting next to my head the whole time. Wow. And so it was like just this crazy like shadow, stuff that I was dealing with. And in one of my visions in the journey, I saw the darkness of the scorpion. And I saw like, it was almost like this aspect of myself, the scorpion aspect of myself, turned completely pearl white. And it was like, almost like I was upgraded to the white scorpion archetype. Beautiful. Whoa, what a great story. You are the white scorpion, and I am so glad you have stung me with your goodness. Oh, wow. So for people that want to connect with you and follow your work and, perhaps be able to participate. Now, one of the things, guys, that Tricia and I have been talking about, you guys have been asking for a long time for some sort of a positive head retreat, and I've always said it's not if, but when. Well, Tricia and I have been talking about maybe putting something together, and I don't have any exact date or anything like that, no exact details, but
I would love your feedback. If you guys feel like that's something that you'd be interested in participating in, reach out to me. My email is brandon@positivehead.com for anyone who doesn't know. And for you, Tricia, for anyone who wants to just follow your work in general or maybe connect with you and, whatever other retreat, you do so much amazing stuff and have so much cool stuff coming up. Any of it that you want to share now? Any bit of that you feel like talking about or just telling people how to connect with you? Now would be a great time to do that.
Thank you. So my website is psychedelicjourneys.com, and I put together these beautiful retreats in beautiful locations. I try to get together the most, like-minded individuals. And what I found was like people would be asking me like, where can I go to the jungle or where can I go outside of the country to do this work? And, I'd find this center and it would be like in the middle of the jungle and it'd be like survivor-like conditions and it'd be like horrible food. It wouldn't be organic. And I was just like, no, it's so important that we create medicine experiences where every bit is like amazing. Like not just the medicine, but embodiment practices like yoga and qigong to help integrate the work, nightly integration circles, cacao ceremonies, traditional sweat lodge, all like mixed in with like beautiful people and amazing food and just like incredible locations. So I just had a really beautiful retreat in Tulum. We had an entire private beach in the biosphere of Sien Con.
Wow.
And it was just so beautiful. Would love to do another retreat there. I'm going to be doing another one for New Year's, which is when I did the last one there. And then I have one coming up in Ibiza, in the beautiful mystical island of Ibiza. And so we're going to be doing some work with the toad there as well. And then Costa Rica, in June, we're going to be doing a journey with Iboga.
Wow. So anyone who's interested in participating in any of that, the best way is just to connect right through your website.
Yeah, and there's a whole page on retreats, and there's a bunch of other cool stuff, too.
Awesome. Beautiful. And as mentioned, I feel that Tricia and I will continue our journey together. And since she's specializes in putting together retreats, that's one of the things for me. I have, as you guys know, a lot going on in my life with business and this doing this 5 days a week. So one of the things that I've been really waiting for until I put together some type of retreat is someone who specializes in that and can sort of help to oversee a lot of that piece of it. So stay tuned for more details on something where it'll be a positive head mashup here, and that will be a beautiful journey. I cannot wait to meet so many of you guys in person there when the time is right. But Tricia, thank you so much for connecting and just being you and gifting me with your magical presence. It has been such an honor and pleasure, and I look forward to continuing to co-create with you.
Thank you. I mean, the work that you're doing is so important, and just your heart behind it is just... You have the biggest heart that I've ever seen, and that's what we need. And what I love about that is that the new paradigm that we are all creating right now, that's what people want, and it's happening. And so, just praying that this reaches more and more people, the beautiful work that you're doing. Thank you for doing it.
Oh, thank you. I do have one last question for you. And that question is, in 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life, according to Tricia Eastman?
So the meaning of life is really that we came into, I think of it like this, whatever you want to call it, the source consciousness is just this blob of consciousness hanging out. And it was like, oh my God, what am I going to do with all this eternity? But create.
Right.
And so it started creating, and it started creating entities and basically collective logos of consciousness. Like, what would it be like if this particular flavor of love was concentrated? What would that be? And that created planets and stars in our galaxy. And then it went all the way down to life and to creation, and all the way down to the smallest microorganism, and all of it was literally to experience. I mean, imagine all of a sudden there's all these amazing entities, And they are like, wouldn't it be cool to have a body and be able to water ski and have sex and eat food? And they're like,
smoke toads.
Smoke toads. Yeah, let's do that. That's a great idea. So we did. And part of it was that in order to hide yourself from yourself to create this surprise and wow and wonder and emotion, there had to be darkness and light. Yeah. There had to be polarity. Right. And part of the experience was to understand how the energy worked. And if you knew the rules of the game, you could always surf the wave. Yeah. And so all we've been doing is remembering how to surf again.
Ah, I love that. You know what? You went over 10 floors and you went over 60 seconds, and I couldn't be happier about it. Thank you, Tricia, for everything that you do. Thank you for being. Love you so much.
Love you too.
Until next time, journey well. All you listeners, love you too. Bye-bye. Well, everyone, if you have enjoyed this positive download from our hearts and minds to yours, please take a minute, give us a rating or review on iTunes. Since iTunes is the holy grail of all things podcasting, your good reviews help us to reach more listeners. Also, we would be extremely appreciative if you would tell your friends and family about the show. Our sincere intent with the Positive Head podcast is to spread positivity to the world because we're selfish, quite honestly. I say that jokingly, but really only halfway joking. I'm referring to the good kind of selfish based on the knowing that we all get what we give in this life, because when we give, we're actually always giving to extensions of self, since we're all really one in the same consciousness, just in different bodies. So if you want to be a good selfish along with us by helping to spread the positivity, by all means, please proceed to shout about the Positive Head podcast from your rooftop. Otherwise, as you continue on your fabulous journey in this 3D reality, be sure to remember this. As long as you ain't dead, you're already positive ahead. Journey well, everyone, and thank you for being.